Back in the 19th century, premature burial was very common. People would be presumed dead when they'd be very much alive. This happened so often that people started making contraptions so that if they were buried alive, they could tell somebody. A rope through the ground into the coffin, connected to a bell so they could ring the bell and tell people to dig them up. Also around this time, grave robbers became a thing. Science was trying to take a step forward in knowing the human body, and so scientists paid good money for dead bodies. And so people would go out at night and dig up freshly buried bodies to sell. John McIntyre lived in London, England at this time. He had become gravely ill and it wasn't looking good. Then one day he woke up and he was in a trance. He couldn't move. He could still hear things. He could kind of see things. It was just blurry, hazy. He couldn't talk. And then he heard the doctor say he's dead. He heard his mom cry out in pain, and he tried to move. He tried to say something. He tried to say, I'm alive. He tried to move a hand, a finger, tried to move his mouth, his eyes, but he couldn't. And then his dad closed his eyes. Even though he couldn't see anything, he heard everything. He heard his funeral. He heard his friends talk about the life he lived. He heard the pallbearers grunt as they placed him in the hearse. He heard the hearse as it drove to the cemetery. He felt them put him in the tomb. He heard the dirt being piled on top. He knew his life was over. There's no coming back from that. He was being buried alive. And that's some people's worst fear, is being buried alive. Sometime later, he heard a loud noise. And then he heard it again, and again, and again. And he thought that animals were after him, the worms. Not only was he going to be buried alive, he was going to be eaten alive. But then he heard his casket open, and he felt somebody pick him up. Thoughts are racing through his mind. Do they know I'm alive? Do they know I'm not dead? What are they doing? What's happening? And all one swoop, they're answered. As he hears the conversation between the grave robbers, talking about what they're going to do with his body. He hears them as they drive to a scientist's workplace. He hears as they place him on the table, the scientist and the grave robbers making the exchange. He hears the scientist get ready to do his work, setting up the research. And as the scientist sticks the knife in the back of John wakes up. He's woken up from his trance. He talks, he can see, he can hear, he can move, he does all that. And in a few hours, he's back to normal life. In Ephesians 2, it says, "And you are dead in the trespasses and sins in which you once walked, following the course of this world, following the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience, among whom we all once lived in the passions of our flesh, carrying out the desires of the body and the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, like the rest of mankind." Before God, we lived like the world. We craved the things of the flesh and we did them. We were the henchmen for the devil himself. We did the things of the world because we liked it. We loved the world. When I was a freshman in high school, I started saying things I knew I shouldn't. Let out a cuss word here and there, saying an inappropriate joke to make my buddies laugh. I dug my grave with destructive words, and then I laid in it. I was dead. This is a grave that could not be dug up. But then look at verse 4. But God, being rich in mercy because of the great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved. God saved us. Even though I was dead in a grave that could not be dug up, God sent down his love, mercy, and grace in the form of Jesus to save me from sin, death, and destruction, to dig me up out of that grave and take my place when he died on the cross. It didn't matter that what I had done before. He just wanted to give me a new life, a new chance. Now, what do I do with this chance? What's my job? What's my purpose? It says in verse 10, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in." We are to do God's good works. God's prepared things in our life to show his glory, to show his resurrection power, to show what he can do, and we should go do them. We should tell others what Jesus has done, what he has done for us, and what he can do for them. God resurrected us from a grave, and now we need to show others how he can resurrect them too.